This is Ace Coach.
Welcome to the show, Claire. It's an absolute pleasure having you on today.
Savi, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really pleased to be here.
I'm pleased to have you on, and I appreciate you coming on. We're pretty much going to be spotlighting you today and trying to gain some lessons learned from your business journey today. And I always like to kick off every interview by, letting my guests introduce themselves. Could you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Sure. I'm 61 years old, young, whatever you like, but I feel young. I've lived and worked all over the world, and I coach top leaders in global companies, founders and scalers, and a couple of athletes and music celebrities. They tend to be from all over the world, and some of them I meet regularly, while others I've literally never shaken their hand or hugged them other than virtually. I've been doing this for about 15 years, though I think I probably actually started when I set up a club in the shed in our garden when I was 7 and invited everyone over to come and learn together. But I bet it was bossier than I make it sound now. So here I am, still being a little less bossy, but keen on everybody's growth.
Oh, man, that's so cool, man. At 7, that's I can't even remember what I was doing at 7, setting up a business or setting up coaching ventures. So that means you've always had this in you to coach people and help people out.
I certainly have always had in me a sense of how important growth is at a personal level. And that was borne out by my being naturally and easily good at school. I didn't have to try very hard. So actually that disserved me in the long term because I didn't learn to try hard for a long time because things came so easily to me. But what inspired me to become a coach was that I used to listen to my friend Jane, who's a very dear friend, and she lives in Barcelona. Because she lives in Barcelona, then I often used to go and stay with her. And she was one of the first ever coaches who were trained in business as opposed to in sport. And I would listen to her doing what she was doing professionally, which of course I shouldn't have been doing, but I was listening eagerly up the stairs. And I used to wish that I could do what she did. But I kind of sold myself the story that I wouldn't be very good at asking questions when I was so good at what I thought of as seeing what I could perceive as the obvious answer. And so I really persisted in this mistaken belief until a friend of a friend more or less forced me into giving coaching a go. It's a long story as to how and exactly why that happened, but basically I was put on the spot and agreed on condition that she would completely understand that I had no training, possibly no ability, and certainly no diplomas or certifications, but that I would make it up as I went along and do some serious training along the way. And 15 years later, here we are. I did love it, and I was reasonably good at it, and I became better at it by coaching in what I used to call a sausage factory. I was doing, many sessions a day with many people for small amounts of money and fees, but that was my learning pad. That was my place where I could just coach and coach and coach and be awkward and clumsy and not worry about it too much, especially because I wasn't taking a lot of money from these people. And that's where I learned.
I really like that. Especially using that initial period where you're charging less to, learn and develop your brand and build yourself up. I really like that. It's kind of like getting paid to develop your business, basically, in a way.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Really, really cool. And
so I would say just as a comment and recommendation to the audience, if you don't mind, that as each of you might be starting out and thinking about how you might get some fees and some learning earlier on, then I would wholeheartedly recommend the platforms that basically take the lion's share of the fee and give you a little bit for that exact reason. They're relatively easy marketing wise for you. You don't need to get into the direct sales so early on, and you get to learn on a fairly simple and not too demanding platform. So just as an addition to that, I think it's worth adding.
I really like that, especially as when you're just starting out. It's so tricky to get clients in the first place, But trying to, like you said, trying to get into the sales side of things, and marketing side of things, that's going to distract you so much from, serving clients and all that stuff. So yeah, using a platform like that will be very, very helpful. I don't know. Have you got any platform in mind? Like, if anyone that comes to
Not
mind?
particularly. I mean, honestly, I don't do it
So
myself
yeah.
because I was given a sort of special private platform. But I've seen friends and colleagues really grow through doing that. As I
Okay.
say, sausage factory, sausage machine coaching
Yeah.
as a way to start out.
I love that. You should coin that phrase. Sausage machine coach. I really like it. Awesome. All right. You've talked a little bit about the types of clients you work with. I'd like to know what would you say is your ICP now, your ideal client profile? What does that look like for you?
Well, I typically work with the same kinds of people now as I've traditionally worked with since that early sausage machine time. I've worked with C-suite leaders from large global, please scrub that. I've worked with C-suite leaders from large global corporates, as well as founders and scalers of companies, and a few select athletes and music celebrities that come along more as a coincidence and through word of mouth than anything else. Anyone who's committed to doing the work and going deep inwards is someone I'll consider working with. And we then need to establish if we have other fits. I like to engage with those who have similar values to mine, who've already demonstrated their willingness to explore and get curious about themselves, and who are keen and willing to laugh and smile a lot along the way. And if they like my style too, then we're good to go.
I love it. Dare I ask, is there anybody you've worked with that we might know about, or are you allowed to say or not say?
I'm certainly not allowed to say. Um, but I have worked with Olympic athletes who've been transitioning into a career after their medals or, travails, whatever they were, and a couple of well-known music celebrities. But that's mum's the word. That's the condition.
We'll push it. Michael Phelps comes to mind, but
Oh, that would be an honor. Not that.
awesome. And what kinds of transformation do you help your clients with? Like, where do you typically meet them, and where do you help them get to?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, sort of following on from that thinking of, I really want to be looking for a good fit. I don't just want somebody who's been sent to me to be fixed, which I don't like as a philosophy. Coaching should not be about fixing. It should be about growth. That we all know that it's sometimes used or recommended when people are feeling a need for a fix of some kind, or their managers are feeling that they should be fixed. But conversely, I would say I'm not a believer in a quick tweak. And while there are always some quick wins that one can find in any situation, and any transformation, of course, always begins with one small first step. I love to work with people who are really tackling the big, messy stuff. So this might be a significant career transition, maybe something like entering an executive leadership team from having been a manager and making that shift from succeeding by doing into succeeding by influencing and impacting. Something like leaving the inside of a corporation and becoming a consultant and independent, maybe starting a company for the first time, or indeed people doing a total makeover, leaving behind a career on the stage or the racetrack, as I've said. It's the long run, really, of creating the future you that I love and find fascinating. And so I tend to insist on working with those who see 6 months of work as being exciting rather than constraining. And many of my clients have now had me by their sides for several years. It's not really at all a question of fixing, but enhancing and creating.
I like that. It's like ongoing development. Like it's like because of
Mm.
challenges will come, especially like if people are transitioning. I don't know, maybe from I don't know VP to president or something like that. It's gonna be different challenges, and they're gonna need additional further help with that. Very interesting. Very very interesting. Okay, and I always like to ask because of obviously our coaches are our audience is inexperienced audience and they are going through challenges and somebody with your expertise and experience could help them out. I always like to know what's one business challenge that you've overcome in your 15 years career, that something that you're really proud of having overcome. And
So I think what I would say is that I've learnt over time how to get over myself with regard to sales.
mm,
I've been very fortunate that I've never been particularly afflicted with a problem of self-esteem or any sort of syndromes that may or may not be mentionable. And I've always been fairly convinced that it was reasonable to have a sense that I was a valuable addition to a client's toolbox.
mm,
But getting to those conversations about what does it cost to work with you was a struggle for quite some time.
yeah. Because you're on
So,
the higher end, so I can imagine. Yeah.
yeah, and what I found was that before I tackled this problem squarely, what I found was very simple. I was a great coach with not many clients, like most coaches at the outset, and sadly, many coaches for the duration. So, what really pushed me to address this challenge was quite simple. I needed to make money. I was raising four children alone, and their school fees needed settling. Their ballet shoes and rugby kit needed to be bought. And so I had to get over my reticence. I had to get over my hesitation to get stuck into those difficult conversations or conversations at the time that I perceived to be difficult.
Very interesting. And that can definitely, definitely make you come out of your comfort zone when you have such pressure
Yeah, yeah.
behind you. Very interesting though. Did you get like help or was it just you diving out of the plane without the parachute?
So I think a couple of things. There's one definitely sort of critical moment at which I discovered there were resources, and particularly one resource that I found life changing in
Mm,
terms of thinking about. Because, of course, this is only ever thinking about, right? The doing is as easy as you make it, right? It happens up here. So, a friend of mine who is also a coach had bought a book called The Prosperous Coach by
mm,
Rich Litvin, which some of you may have read, some of you may not have. If you haven't, you need to read it. And I read it and reread it and then listened to all his stuff on YouTube and on his own site. I read all his newsletters. I pretty much studied everything Rich ever did.
mm.
And I studied hard. And from that, I learned to accept that I would get at least 9 no's in order to get a yes. And once you see that, it's clear that his philosophy works. And if you study hard and like most things, I've made my own adaptation of his techniques, but any coach at any stage should be learning this stuff. It's basically enrollment through being and doing and showing, not by telling. And I think that's crucial. The idea that when somebody says, what's it like to work with you? It's ridiculous to describe it. Why not just give them a little experience and see what happens? There's much more to it than that. But this sort of way of operating has really helped me a lot. And it doesn't matter whether you're trying to enroll a client for $100 an hour or $1,000 an hour. It's the same thing. And by the way, the ratios may well be the same in terms of 9 no's for one yes.
It's a good point, and this is where some of the conversations we have over here about pricing, because of the truth is, like you said, whether you price low or price high, you're still gonna get that
Mm.
9 to 1. So you might as well just price high, and then you
Yeah,
know,
I think you have to choose a price that's credible and a price that you're slightly uncomfortable with. Um, and what I know changed in my practice and in my commercial side of the business after I started work on all that
Mm.
content was that I began to get more clients
Okay.
and, more significantly, not to lose my mind every time a prospect said no,
Yeah.
not to feel rejected. And I also learned just to say the numbers, the amount that it costs to work with me, until it became just numbers. And it
Mm.
became a game to collect no's and also to be very, very clear about the psychographics of who I was after, my tribe.
Mm.
Not just any clients, but my kind of clients. And our job as coaches is to polarize people, not to be plain vanilla.
I love that, especially the whole idea of collecting no's, because of that's something we all. It's funny you should say that. I was having a convo with somebody recently, and they were talking about this whole idea of something similar, basically making it a game to collect the no's, because of that's one thing you're gonna get, and then
Mm,
you don't have to worry so much about the rejection and stuff like that. I
yeah.
suspect the rejection has to do with some mental block or psychological stuff going on in the.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. And I guess also it probably depends very much on what sort of childhoods and early adulthoods we had. Um, if you've done an activity like ballet or a sport like skiing, you're probably pretty good at handling rejection and failure, right? If you've been coddled and always told that you're perfect and wonderful, then it's going to be harder. So, once again, it may well take a good look inward as well as applying some of these pieces of advice to get there. But there's no reason why anybody cannot get there eventually.
I agree. Awesome. All right, then let's go into the what we call the rapid fire questions, and we're just gonna ask you three quick questions. I think we've got.
Sure.
I think we've got two out. Actually, we've got one. All right. I'll ask you the first one. So, what's one tool that you can't live without in your business?
Sure. It's my heart and my ears. I'm going to cheat and have two, but they're part of the same body. So I reckon that's okay.
Okay. And obviously, being running your own business is super stressful. What's one thing you do to look after your mental health?
Well, I typically take things quite slowly in the morning, which is when our brain is most susceptible to, whether it hears or sees and experiences good or bad things. I move. I do spend a bit of time feeling and writing down my gratitude. I literally smell the coffee and the flowers. I have some beautiful plants on my balcony. Um, and of course, sometimes it's less than perfect, and I scroll and rush around like a mad fool. I am definitely not the paragon of virtue in every respect, but that's the sort of caretaking of myself that I like to do in the morning. It also helps me a lot that I easily fall in love with my clients, not in a creepy way, but I love easily and openly. So I seldom feel drained by my work. And that just naturally keeps me mentally healthy. And I also like to keep closely in touch with friends and family wherever I am, however far away I might be. And if that can't be over a walk or a coffee, then WhatsApp will be used a lot.
Of it. And finally, what would you say has been the best investment you've made in your business? I suspect I know, but what is that? What would you say?
I'm not going to say Rich's book. He's had enough publicity already. What I would say actually is just showing up every single day and learning a bit more and becoming a bit better. I'm really fortunate to have a thriving practice these days with clients, some of whom are household names, but I'm still learning. And sometimes I learn from somebody who just started out last week. Sometimes I learn from young children. So showing up, accepting and relishing the fact that I'm constantly learning, and definitely building and keeping a network of friends and supporters around me.
Love it. I just have to ask prior a little bit. When you say showing up, do you mean creating content, or what does that mean?
We're in 2025 and LinkedIn is a desert. I'm not sure that I have a great answer for that. Not necessarily. I mean, showing up and being open and learning minded and doing a good job of the people that I am coaching and just, showing up in a consistent way, not necessarily with a particular activity. I write articles, I write stuff on LinkedIn, which tends to be a bit musing and quirky. Sometimes the algorithm loves it, sometimes it hates it. I've given up trying to understand, and actually just do things that I think will either serve, my audience and my connections, or even me. Sometimes sharing something on LinkedIn is actually a moment for processing an idea, a piece of thinking. But I'm not religiously thinking that if I post or advertise on LinkedIn or TikTok or wherever it might be every day, I'm going to get more clients. That's never been my game anyway. And I think it's even less likely these days.
I couldn't agree more. LinkedIn is the whole algorithm game is very. Only the designers know how it works anyway. But yeah,
Yeah, and they change it all the
they
time.
change it all the
Actually,
time.
coming back to your sort of deeper question about what does showing up mean, I think what it means as well is that whether I'm, bumping into someone new and having a coffee with them and maybe finding out that there's a connection and some interesting work we could do together, whether it's showing up in a coaching session, whether it's writing a piece on LinkedIn, whether it's just, going to the gym with one of my kids or whatever it might be. They're grown up kids, but they're kids nevertheless. I think the showing up is also, it's about doing, being me, being authentically me. And not because the version of me isn't improvable, of course it is, but it is who I am now. And it's who I'm striving to be and thriving as. And so, in doing that, then when people do cross paths with me in whatever context, they see who I am. And if that's the kind of person they want to do some coaching work with, great, it's likely to work out. And if it's not, then that's also great.
I agree. It makes sense. It makes sense. Nothing like being your true authentic self. Basically, like I think that will attract your people to you regardless. So I love that. Claire, this has been a wonderful, wonderful chat. You've really given us some really, a little bit of a masterclass here in terms of coaching, and I love how deep you went in with some of the answers and stuff like that. So I really appreciate that. What's the best
It's
way
a pleasure.
for our viewers to, if anybody that would like to check out your stuff or work with you,
Sure.
what's the best way to
Honestly,
do
the easiest way probably is on LinkedIn.
it? Okay.
I'm on there as Claire MJ Harbour, and Harbour is spelt the British way, not the American way, OUR. At the end, you can Google me and find me fairly easily. Or if you want to email, then the address is all in one word, culturepearl@me.com. And I'm sure you'll put that in the notes as well, Zavi. So
Yeah, we're
let's not worry too much about it, but easy ways.
yeah, we're gonna include all of that in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much
Fantastic.
for coming on the show, Claire. It's been an absolute blast.
Good. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And I hope the listeners will gain and glean a little bit of this, and all can feel free to reach out and at the very least, connect and have a few exchanges of words. And if I can help someone to do the growth that they're aiming for, then let's talk.